Imperial News Network, political violence mainstreamed. Shield Karn says in the first 11 minutes that his mom watched too much Imperial News. Yeah. That's it. I love the mother. She kills me. Every time she's on, she's great. She's so great. But you understand why Cyril is the way he is with that mother. It's like, it makes sense. I've been really enjoying Andor Season 2 so far. I was already a big fan of Andor Season 1, even, going to that show, like, after Rogue One and how it was, so critically and commercially successful. Ended up really enjoying it, obviously. When it was announced that they were going to do an Andor spin-off show, like a prequel sequel, essentially, about the origins of the character, origins of the rebellion, I thought, like, all right, I don't know. Some of these other projects I'd be more interested in. Well, it turns out Andor was the best thing. Not just because many of those other projects were bad and disappointing, right? Like the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, yes, Ahsoka, yes. But Andor was just, Season 1 was just so well written. The production values were incredible. The direction was amazing. The performances across the board, like the whole concept, the idea of just, what is it like just for Joe Schmo? These schmucks, these blue-collar workers living under space fascism. What's that like? And it's very harrowing. It's scary. It's terrifying. And as you follow these characters, these characters don't have like special force abilities. They're not bounty hunters or clone trooper commandos. These are just us, regular people. What is it like to live in the Star Wars universe under the imperial fascist regime? And it was so captivating and it's just so well told, so well executed. Loved it. I think it's by far the best thing Star Wars has produced of the Disney era, but also probably the best thing since the original trilogy in terms of live action content. So going into Season 2, I was already very excited about it, like many people were. And the first 3 episodes I thought were great. Where now it's like each arc, which I believe there are 4 arcs for this particular season of 3 episodes. Each one is like a specific amount of years before the Battle of Yavin, of course, which, the destruction of the first Death Star, a big inciting moment in the rebellion and starting, the eventual fall of the Empire, obviously, and throughout the events of the original trilogy. And the first arc was 4 BBY, and now this is 3 BBY. And we're following our characters whose lives have just radically changed within just a year after the events of that first arc, where involved Cassian Andor stealing this advanced TIE fighter. I think it was like kind of like a TIE Interceptor or TIE Advanced fighter or something, like TIE Avenger, I believe. It's a TIE fighter, I know that. And like many of his friends and lover, like Bix, like keeping a low profile in this farming planet. And then also at the same time, you have the Imperial story with Cyril and Dedra and their weird, fucked up relationship and how that's playing out. Like you're seeing just the slices of all these people's lives and how they all kind of come together in a really interesting way. And I thought that was great when incorporating a lot of elements of tragedy as well. And, this new arc takes place a year after, and our characters, as I said, are in very different places. Like Andor and Bix have seemingly reconciled and are now truly lovers again. And, they're having a lot of downtime, hiding, funny enough, in the Lion's Den on Coruscant, which is the imperial capital of the galaxy. Also, just, not to go off on a little tangent about Coruscant, but I will. But I'll come back to Bix and Cassian Andor in just a bit. Like, it was funny, before jumping into my Andor review, I went off on a Star Wars tangent earlier, talking about how I had issues with the aesthetics of the prequels. I didn't like how, for whatever reason, even though the prequels take place in the past, like everything is very shiny and glossy and looks very new, doesn't look like Star Wars. But what's so great, what Tony Gilroy and his team have done, and the production people, is that they've made Coruscant very much a prequel planet, very much kind of the antithesis of what of the look of Star Wars has been for so many people of the original trilogy. They finally have made Coruscant, both last season and this season, feel like it's part of the original trilogy in its look and just the apartments and how people live and people just going to the grocery store. I just love that look and just the day-to-day lives of these people. For example, of Cassian and Bix just living in Coruscant undercover, but still dealing with real-world issues and with the relationship problems. Like Cassian is still going undercover, still doing missions for Stellan Skarsgård's Lucian, but Bix is having some issues. All right, she's still, I love, and I think Ardrea Arjona has done such a fantastic job with this character. And she's been going through so many traumatic moments, still affected PTSD from the previous season and certain things that have happened, certainly in the last arc. But she's having hallucinations. She's a drug addict now. She doesn't know what's real and what's fake. And everything that she's been doing with her performance and what's written for her character, I think has been very harrowing. I really liked it. Again, one of the things that I appreciate most about Andor is that it's not afraid, unlike many aspects of Star Wars written by certain people, Dave Filoni. They're so afraid to bring in mature concepts and themes and stories, and Tony Gilroy and his people are not. And so they're afraid, like, yeah, what is it like to have a drug addiction in Star Wars? And they go into that, and I thought it's handled with a lot of care, and it grounds these characters, makes it very realistic. And at the same time, Bix is not just like a trauma character who's constantly getting beaten down. I'll tell you what, especially in the last episode of this arc, she is finally starting to reclaim her life, reclaim her sense of being, and going up against the people that really affected her for so many years. There's certain characters get a big degree of comeuppance in this specific arcs in regards to Bix, and I really like that. But with like Cassian and Diego Luna has just done, I think, just such a fantastic job as this character. He's my favorite, along with him and K2SO. They're my favorite characters in Disney Star Wars, the Disney Star Wars era. Just showing the darker side of the rebellion, and what, like, just the nasty stuff where, even though the rebellion is like known for, Luke and Han and Leia, and it's so heroic fighting the Grand Empire, like Cassie represents the stuff, like it's the dirty work. It's the stuff that needs to get done behind the scenes. That's not going to be loved. That's not going to be celebrated. It's doing all the foul shit. It's doing the spy craft. And he's like finally truly immersed himself into this world. Finally becoming a soldier, believing in the idea of the rebellion, but being very careful. Like, very much like Stellan Skarsgård's character of Luthen, like, putting on a whole different persona. Like, they're focusing a lot on this planet of Gorman, which is, they've essentially turned into the French resistance from World War II. I'll touch more on that in just a bit. But like going to this planet and presenting himself as this fashion designer, this dressmaker, essentially, so he can get a bit of an inkling into the rebel cell and the growing rebellion on this planet, to see if they're like, okay, if we can actually help them, if we can, use them against the Empire. And him making certain choices that piss people off, but he defends himself, and the reason, as to why, he makes some of these choices. I think like what they're doing with Cassian has been absolutely fantastic. And on Gorman itself, one of the things I was really interested in seeing was, I was already familiar with Gorman as a world, as a planet. Like, that is actually from the expanded universe. And they go into the actual thing that happens on that planet. I thought they were actually going to recreate it, but they actually talk about it as it already happened, which I thought was really interesting, involving a well-known Star Wars character of Grand Moff Tarkin. He does something fucking foul on that planet, and people are bringing it up. And what's so great about Andor is, and with Star Wars, I think it has a pretty bad reputation of handling this, is the whole member berries thing. It's like, let's bring up this character. Let's have this character return. It's like, remember this, remember Han Solo, remember Chewbacca, remember what, this or that. But Andor is able to bring up like well-known characters just through conversation, like Emperor Palpatine, like Grand Moff Tarkin, for instance. But it's just people conversing about them and talking about the things that they've done in interactions with them, but it's not done in a way where it's like, huh? Like they're jangling some fucking keys in front of your face. It's like, no, it's relevant to the story, right? And it's not like a glorified cameo or anything like that. It's like this planet of Gorman is still dealing with the fallout and the trauma and the horrific thing that Grand Moff Tarkin did to this planet years ago. It's affected them to their core, and the reason why there's this growing rebellion on the planet to begin with. And I just think that's like so interesting and so cool. And incorporating that kind of like World War II French resistance to it, because everyone on the planet like speaks French or like a variation of French, which I thought was like really interesting. It kind of has like, this is like Space France in Star Wars, which we haven't really seen before. I thought that was it. Everything was very Parisian. I thought that was really cool aesthetically. And unlike, say, the prequels, which I don't feel like were aesthetically Star Wars, despite this having a very French aesthetic in terms of its culture and its people and their clothing and just their homes, you know, it feels very French, but it still at the same time felt Star Wars. It kind of had that grit to it, kind of had that utilitarian look to it still, despite the Parisian French flair. I really like, again, I have no complaints about the aesthetics of the production design of Andor. They spent over $600 million on it, so it should look fucking good. And thankfully it does. It truly, truly does. But everything of Cassian and the Gorman Resistance, how they all handled that is great. And how that it just builds to like a really cool heist sequence that has a certain degree of tragedy to it, I thought was wonderful. At the same time, we're also dealing with the character of Willman, who was one of the people that was hiding out in that farm world that was eventually picked up by Cassian along with Bix, because he was like, we don't know what the hell happened to this guy. Well, he's joined Saw Gerrera's partisan movement, which is kind of like separate from the rebellion. They're the more fringe group. And listen, Forrest Whitaker, as I'm glad that they've kind of had him pop up as this character throughout a variety of Star Wars TV shows, whether it be, obviously he was a character invented in the Clone Wars and by Dave Filoni, so give him credit for that. Obviously I've criticized a lot of, Dave Filoni's stuff, but listen, I want to, give the man his due when he has done something great. I feel like the Saw Gerrera character is good. And he had the little bit that he had in Rogue One, but him popping up in Rebels, obviously, and in Star Wars video games, or more recently returning Andor, it makes sense. It just allows Forrest Whitaker to act even more crazy. If you guys love it when Saw Gerrera is going on lies, deception, are you here to kill me? He does more of that. And it's also Tony Gilroy and his people like writing the dialogue for him and creating these really tense moments where you're like, I don't know what this guy's gonna do in any given moment. This guy feels like he can hug me in the next minute, or he'll shoot me in the face, or he'll just go off on a fucking monologue about him being in a slave camp and him and all these other boys were stripped down naked by these battle droids to harvest this thing, and then this chemical was released and did horrible things. So it's like it's like I realize what character what his inspiration is, who clearly inspired this character. He's very much Colonel Kurtz from Heart of Darkness. He's Marlon Brando's Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now. That's who Forrest Whitaker's character is. He has gone through all this trauma. He has seen so many horrible things, and he just has these beautiful and terrifying monologues that are, again, you don't know if it's going to inspire you or terrify you or just make you just want to just get out of there as quickly as possible, just leave. He has some of my favorite moments this particular arc. I thought he was great, and I just love, he is such a wild card. You just don't know what he's going to do in any given scene, and I really, really like what they've given him to do. Also, we've gotten a lot more with Luthen. With Stellan Skarsgård's Luthen these last couple episodes in this particular arc, and he's got a point where he's kind of losing control of his entire operation, and him and his assistant, who I'll talk on about in just a minute, they just can't handle the influx of information from all these various rebel cells. Like, they're getting so many calls about like this weapon shipment and we can do this specific act, and it's like, we are too small to handle all this. It shows you just like the rebellion keeps growing and growing and growing across the galaxy, but they're so disparate. There's no connective tissue between them, with the exception of Luthen. He can't do it all himself. Him and his assistant can't do it all now. And I like that he's like realizing, I'm at my kind of wit's end with this, and I don't know what the next steps are. And he's willing to take more drastic actions. And even like some of his like spy stuff is starting to film. There's a wonderful sequence, again, Tony Gilroy and his people are excellent when it comes to creating tension throughout this entire show. And there's this great little mini heist sequence that involves them along with another heist that's going on, the French resistance plan of Gorman, which I thought was wonderful. And it's just like these two characters having this kind of faux conversation while trying to remove this bug in this room that's about to be swept for like listening devices in like a couple of hours. It was wonderfully well crafted. And the music too for all these sequences, I think is just fantastic. I just love the score for this entire series. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of mention with these episodes, because I've really enjoyed all these storylines so far, but it's also Cyril, who after the events of the last arc is now living on Gorman, and you find out the real reason why he's there and what he's actually doing for the Empire. But they also continue to explore the very weird dynamic and relationship between Cyril and Deidre, and God, it's an Imperial romance, and it's just as weird and awkward and kind of cringy as you would possibly imagine. It's these two people who have lived relatively miserable lives, are incredibly antisocial, and you see them attempt to be intimate, and it's just so fascinating to watch with them working through their various insecurities. Like they feel the most alive when they're, trying to uncover a rebel cell instead of like trying to be affectionate with one another, even though they obviously have a physical attraction, they have physical intimacy, but seeing them interact with each other, it's really fun. It's really interesting. I really like it. And it also just shows like the whole grand scheme of things. Like this is the Empire's grand plan, is to create essentially a threat on the planet of Gorman in order for them to take over the planet completely, thoroughly, and use those materials to help with the construction of the Death Star. And I like that that's what so much of this, and you realize over time, it's like, oh yeah, well, of course Rogue One is naturally going to be the finale to all this. It is all leading up to this. That's where the story is going. But it doesn't feel like, it doesn't have that feeling of like, oh, they're just doing the same things over and over again. It just goes back to like the member berries or anything. It's like, no, this feels natural, but now we're just learning the intimate moments that brought us to that grand finale of like how this all happened, like how the events of Rogue One, transpired, and eventually the plans falling into Princess Leia, and then eventually getting Luke Skywalker on board and destroying the Death Star. It just feels like, okay, I just love seeing all the connective tissue, and it's done with such care and craftsmanship, of such a level of scale, with such well-written stories and characters and loving direction. It's just like, yeah, it's like it just feels like such a wonderful, complete story, even so far, even though we still have 6 more episodes to go. We still have 2 more arcs, but yeah, Andor continues to be great. And even if they're bringing in more of the stuff that we recognize, whether it be Director Krennic, who does play another role, again, a small role in the last episode, but still really great and still feels natural and doesn't feel like, we're just going to shove him in here and dangle him in front of your face. It's like, no, it makes sense as to why he's in that scene, the role that he's playing here. I just really like what Tony Gilroy and his people are doing with this show. And as I said before, I'm not saying every single Star Wars project needs to be like Andor, but I don't think it would hurt if a lot of Star Wars projects feel like Andor, have that same level. I'm not saying like we need more Star Wars spy shows. Like, no, I just want the same level of writing and care with these stories and characters, and also the spectacle too. And there's still great spectacle in this show. I just want that for Star Wars overall, and I feel like the franchise itself would be in a better place. Would be a lot healthier. It's just cool growing up like a Star Wars fan, and then having a show that matches the quality of some of the best, HBO genre shows or HBO dramas, like premiere television. It's great to see, and I'm very appreciative that this that this story exists. And I think it should serve as an example that other Star Wars projects and shows and movies should follow one day. Will they? I don't know. I don't know. Part of me says, like, this might be it. This might be all we get for a long time in terms of the quality of a Star Wars project. But thankfully, we're always going to have it. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing how, well, at least this season concludes, as we know what the final conclusion is. But yeah, so far, Andor's great. Highly recommend it. Even if, whether you be a big Star Wars fan, whether you've been turned off by Star Wars, whether you're not even frustrated or angry, apathetic, I think it's still worth watching. But yeah, chat, that's my thoughts on the second arc of Andor so far. I'll review the other arcs in time next week and the following week. But I think it's great. What about you guys? What do you think of Andor Season 2, Arc 2?
5 minutes later.
The dream! My God! Are you here to kill me? He kind of has that. He has a lot of those moments in here. The dots are connecting, but it's not over. Exactly. It's like, okay, this is connecting this. This makes sense. I like it. Also, you get to just see, like, essentially the CIA version of the Empire works, like that part of the government. They call it the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau, and just like all their spycraft and how they manipulate planets and people and bend them to their will. Not with Star Destroyers, not with Death Stars, not with ATSTs or AT-ATs or Darth Vader or what have you. It's like, nah, it's the gritty fucking spy work behind the scenes that's just so foul. It's like, oh, this is how they maintain control. The propaganda and all that's like, oh. And you see, I should mention this too. You see an Imperial. This kind of blew me away. At one point, you kind of see a little bit, a slice of an Imperial news broadcast, but it's like an Imperial kind of like talk show where you have like these two women who actually, funny enough, are like dressed like prequel characters, and they look ridiculous. But they kind of reminded me of, remember those two Fox News women, Diamond and Silk? They're kind of like the Diamond and Silk of the Empire, essentially. Where they're talking about like Emperor Palpatine. Like, oh, we all love Emperor Palpatine. He's just great. He's gonna make the galaxy great again. I was like, whoa. I was like, yeah. They're talking about like, oh, politics, like who cares? We're gonna, it doesn't matter. Emperor Palpatine, he's gonna protect us. He's gonna do what needs to be done, all right? But what you need to do is buy this and buy that. I was like, this is amazing. I thought that was really, really cool. And it's just Bix. It's so funny because you find out it's Bix watching it while she's just high on drugs. She's like, I don't know what that drug is she's taking. She's like, she's always dipping it, and she looks blazed out, like she's looking cross-eyed watching this show. And I thought that was really funny. I thought that was great. Oh man. Hamilton Burger, hello, hi Chris. What I've missed beside your Andor review? We reacted some trailers, had some tangents. You know how it is. It's like we're watching the Interstellar SS. Yeah. Peter Griffin. Lord. It was really good, though, Peter Griffin. It was actually really good. I liked it a lot. I recommend it, Chad. I recommend it. I thought it was great. Yeah, Imperial News Network. Political violence mainstreamed. Oh, these goddamn Gormans, Chad. What's that with Max Rebo? Hold on. Let me see what that is. That looks fucking wild. What was it? Oh, hold on. Laura Ingraham doing like a fucking interview of Grand Moff Tarkin is so perfect. She looks like an Imperial fucking agent. She looks like she would work for the ISB, the Imperial Propaganda Channel. Where's the Max Rebo jizz moments away? It kind of fits. I mean, that's really what, a lot of this most recent episodes were, where they had it where at one point, like, the thing that popped up immediately for me, where I made the Diamond and Silk comparison. Because those are like two like basically propagandists for the Trump administration on Fox News. You had it where Bix was like, who was blazed out of her mind because she was high on drugs. She was like watching Imperial Fox News essentially. It was kind of crazy to see. I was like, whoa. But yeah, and Grand Moff Tarkin, he's not in the episodes, but they talk about him a lot in these episodes because he does something really fucking foul. They talk about something he did that was really foul. But very good, Deadpool. Jill Karn says in the first 11 minutes that his mom watches too much Imperial News. Yeah. That's it. I love the mother. She kills me. Every time she's on, she's great. She's so great. But you understand why Cyril is the way he is with that mother. It's like, it makes sense.